Jinyang, a Chinese intelligence officer, moved to New York where he established the largest car theft gang in American history. They specialized in luxurious car theft. Usually, if the police can't get a stolen car, they can at least get a piece of it. But Yang and his gang stole thousands of cars without the police getting any trace. The cars vanished and nothing was left behind. So where did the cars go? What brought your gang from China to America? Why did a Chinese intelligence officer steal cars in New York? Keep watching to get the answers. New York City is still one of the biggest cities in the world. According to some studies, it is considered the most luxurious city on Earth. It has the largest number of wealthy people who normally possess luxurious and expensive cars. New York City has America's largest concentration of high-end cars. In 1999, a massive wave of car thefts hit New York. Imagine that 48 high-end vehicles were stolen in less than a month and a half, and the cars disappeared in a matter of seconds. The thefts were quick and quiet. The thief opened the car, calmly turned it on, and took it. The gang did not have a specific targeted area in the city. They used to steal cars from malls, parking lots, and everywhere. The strange thing is that all these cars did not appear again. Generally, the stolen cars are found without their expensive parts because the thieves resell them. But the cars that the gang was stealing were disappearing, and the police did not have any trace of them. So what were these thieves doing with the cars after they were stolen? Where did they take them? These questions confused the police and prompted them to believe that the cars were being exported. The only place that was suitable for exporting a large number of cars like these was Brooklyn's port in New York. A team from the New York police, especially from the Car Theft Investigation Department, went to Brooklyn's port where they conducted an investigation, but they did not notice any suspicious activity related to a car theft gang. At that moment, they felt that they were dealing with a large entity, maybe a gang belonging to the organized crime world. But in fact, the person responsible for all these operations was not even an American. This person was called Jinyang, who was a Chinese man. The biggest surprise was that he was a former intelligence officer in the Chinese army and the only person responsible for the theft of thousands of luxury cars from New York, which he made himself up to $40 million, which is worth up to $75 million today. The question is, how did he do it? To know the answer, let us first know who Jinyang is. Jinyang was an intelligence officer in the Chinese army, from which he was discharged in 1990. Then he moved to Shanghai, a wealthy city, where there was a high demand for luxurious cars. But such cars were not available for sale in China. So here, Yang saw an opportunity he could take advantage of. He contacted the gangs in Shanghai and offered the leader of one of these gangs a business deal. Yang told the gang leader that he used to work as an intelligence officer in the army, and he had experience in smuggling, how it works, and how it is fought by the security forces. So he managed to convince him that he could bring him cars from outside, and the gang leader could sell them in China through his network. The leader of the gang liked the idea because he knew that cars in China are expensive. He could get a car from outside that is worth $100,000 and sell it in China for $200,000. So it's a profitable business. Yang agreed with the leader to a 40 to 60 profit split deal, and the gang leader gave Yang $500,000 to set up his gang and start implementing his operations in the city where the cars are, New York. Jinyang knew that New York would be the best target, where he could get all types of cars he wanted. The number of luxurious cars in the city is huge because of the number of rich people there. Yang took the $500,000 that his partner gave him and traveled to New York to start executing his plan. Since the beginning, Yang started using his military experience that he learned in his former occupation. He entered America using a fake identity and adopted the name Kenny. He pretended to be a struggling immigrant. Yang's first goal was to integrate into American society. He wanted to make people feel that he was a normal person. He used to drive an old Nissan Altima. He did not want to appear as a wealthy person who had money from the beginning. Yang brought with him a man to assist him and to be his right hand. His name was Poi Chow. So the first task that Yang and Chow had to do was to secure a warehouse where they could keep the stolen cars until they got shipped to China. But the warehouse must meet certain conditions. First, it had to be away from any police station, and second, it must be in a quiet area where there are not many problems or crimes. After weeks of research, Yang and Chow found the appropriate warehouse. They then created an anonymous company to rent it, ensuring no trace would lead back to Yang. Yang started recruiting trusted Chinese people to work with him. He surrounded himself only with individuals he could trust completely. The gang transformed the warehouse into what appeared to be a food storage facility, with food boxes placed in front to avoid suspicion. They also installed surveillance cameras around the warehouse to monitor all activity. Yang and his gang were now ready for the next step, stealing the cars. Interestingly, Yang had no prior experience in car theft and didn't want to get his hands dirty. He needed someone with expertise in the field, so he began searching for a skilled car thief. He attended car garages and auctions, mingling with those in the profession. After some time, Yang found the perfect candidate, a man named Dean, an expert car thief. Dean, in turn, brought in his trusted associate, Mario Lopez, who was even better at stealing cars. Together, they formed the core of the car theft operation. Dean would handle the thefts through a network of thieves, while Yang kept his distance, managing the logistics and ensuring his identity remained hidden. Once the team was in place, Yang implemented a highly organized system. Mario and his network targeted specific cars, focusing only on luxury vehicles. They scouted locations like upscale malls, residential areas, and parking lots. Mario's skills were unmatched. He could bypass security systems and start a car in under a minute by reprogramming its computer with a laptop. After stealing the cars, the thieves parked them in safe locations among other luxury vehicles to avoid suspicion. They left the cars for 2 days to ensure no GPS trackers were active. If the cars weren't flagged, they were then moved to a warehouse. Yang's meticulous attention to detail ensured the operation ran smoothly and avoided detection. Yang had strict protocols for moving the stolen cars into the warehouse. Cars were parked a few blocks away, and Dean would drive them in after conducting surveillance to ensure they weren't being followed. Yang employed multiple layers of security, including surveillance cameras and decoy vehicles, circling the area to spot any police presence. Inside the warehouse, a trusted team of Chinese workers prepared the cars for shipment. They repaired any damage, reprogrammed the car's computer, and made new keys. The cars were then loaded into containers disguised as food shipments, complete with fake manifests matching the container's weight. Yang devised a sophisticated shipping method to smuggle the cars to China. The containers were first transported to ports in states like New Jersey, far from New York, to avoid police attention. From there, they were loaded onto trains bound for California. Using California ports, which were closer to China, Yang ensured the cars were shipped efficiently. To further avoid detection, the containers were transferred mid-route to other ships, whose owners were in on the scheme. These ships carried the containers to China, where the cars were sold at a massive profit. As demand for luxury cars in China grew, Yang decided to increase his car export rate by targeting car dealerships. Mario Lopez posed as a customer to scout dealerships, locating where the car keys were stored. At night, Mario and his team broke into the dealership, stole the keys, and drove off with multiple cars within minutes. However, during one operation, a stolen car was involved in an accident. The driver was caught and confessed to the police, revealing details about Dean and Mario. This breakthrough put the police on the gang's trail. Investigators began tracking Dean and eventually discovered Yang's warehouse. They monitored the location, hoping to gather enough evidence to make arrests. However, Yang's associate Chow noticed the surveillance. Acting swiftly, Yang orchestrated the removal of all cars and equipment from the warehouse under the guise of food deliveries, fooling the police. When the police finally raided the warehouse, they found nothing. Yang had once again outsmarted them. With no evidence and no knowledge of Yang's identity, investigators were forced to shift their focus back to Dean. Police obtained court approval to monitor Dean's phone calls, where they intercepted cryptic conversations with someone named Kenny. Investigators suspected Kenny was the gang's leader, but had no solid evidence. Yang, aware of the surveillance, frequently changed phones and instructed his team to do the same, complicating the investigation. Zhao's carelessness, however, provided the breakthrough. He was overheard discussing dinner plans with Yang at a restaurant. This allowed undercover officers to observe Yang in person for the first time and gather intel on a new warehouse location. Armed with surveillance cameras and GPS trackers, investigators closely monitored Yang's new warehouse. This time, they watched as stolen cars were brought in and prepared for shipment. Despite Yang's meticulous planning, the gang grew complacent, skipping some of the usual precautions, which led to their downfall. The gang stole multiple cars from a parking garage, paying off a guard to access the keys. However, one of the stolen cars had an active GPS tracker. Local police, unaware of the ongoing investigation, tracked the car to Yang's warehouse and arrived at the scene, inadvertently alerting the gang. Realizing the police were onto them, the gang members fled. Investigators, seeing their operation unravel, acted swiftly. They arrested workers at the warehouse and immediately moved to apprehend Yang, whom they now identified as Jinyang. Yang was arrested outside his home that night. Investigators finally uncovered his true identity and his background as a former Chinese intelligence officer. While Yang's arrest marked a significant victory, the investigation was unable to determine the full extent of his operations or recover the stolen cars. Jinyang pleaded guilty to enterprise corruption and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Despite stealing thousands of cars and amassing over $40 million, worth $75 million today, the police recovered none of the money as it had been laundered back to China. Yang's sophisticated operations and intelligence background allowed him to outsmart authorities for years. Even in defeat, his legacy as America's greatest car thief remains unparalleled. In the end, Jinyang may have lost the final battle, but he arguably won the war. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story.